the first resource I want to talk about is book. Um, it's a classic, really. It's Leading from the Second Chair by Mike Bonham and Roger Patterson. You know, I guess it's written for anybody who finds themselves not in church kind of leadership, not in a senior leader, senior pastor position. Yeah. So you introduced me earlier as, you know, associate leader, associate pastor, and I've been in that role pretty much in Riviera Life Church for the past 13 years, and very, I suppose I'm kind of waving the flag for those in the similar position to myself, although you know, I suppose it's any leadership role that's not the senior leader. So youth pastor, kids pastor, whatever your title is, assistant, executive, whatever. It's that kind of supporting leader. And very often we hear, rightly so, about senior leaders and senior leadership. But I think this role is a real precious and vital role as well. You know, so sometimes it can be seen as one of those kind of transition roles. You know, you're in it for a while before you move on up to maybe a senior leader or something else like that. But actually, some people are called to be that second chair, that associate, and that is absolutely fine. So this is a classic, and I remember someone mentioning this when I was a minister in training many years ago, and I remember picking it up then and having a read through, and more recently again, just kind of refreshing, pouring through it, and reflecting on how I've grown in this leadership role as well, and to kind of wave the flag, because in my other role with AOG and, you know, marking and ministers in training, that kind of thing, you know, you look across, and probably the majority of those who we see ministers in training probably are in a second chair position of some description. And so I think it's really important that we wave the flag for that, you know. And I probably haven't come across too many resources recently that really bespokely cover that kind of role. And so that's why I'm just returning to this kind of classic Leading from the Second Chair.
Okay, great. Well, let's dive into the book. What's some of the sort of takeaways that you've taken from that book? What are some of the things you've learned?
Yeah, I guess as I reflect on my role, and I reflect on as I've been reading the book, you know, you've got to be able to serve someone else's vision. You know, and that can be very trying sometimes when you've got your own ambitions, you've got your own dreams. You've got to be able to complement giftings of maybe the senior leader, those who are in that first chair role, and you've got to build up trust. You've got to build up relationship. It's so important if you're going to have a successful kind of ministry together. You've got to be a listener. You've got to be able to cheer them on. You've got to help navigate their thoughts, their thinking, and their plans. You've got to develop openness and an honesty, and sometimes you've got to navigate as well difficult conversations and situations that arise in church life, and we're all human, and so sometimes you've just got to navigate that, and so this book kind of taps into that. You know, one of the things the book kind of comments on is know where the line is as well. You know, in terms of expectations, and between first chair, second chair, that kind of thing. And so as I've been kind of reflecting and reading through the book, it kind of picks up a lot of these themes. And it also speaks, you know, at the end of every chapter to first chair leaders as well, and in how to develop relationships with the second chair and those who they're working with. So it kind of just talks through kind of communication, talks through relationship, talks through roles, that kind of thing. It's in an American context, you know, big church American context, but having said that, a lot of these principles are so transferable. And as I reflect on my journey, I can kind of go, yeah, I see that, you know. And when change happens, how to navigate that. And yeah, so those are kind of some of the themes that are coming up in leading from the second chair.
No, that's great. I think this is a really important role. I think, and I think, like you said, that there are many ministers coming through our second chair leaders nowadays, especially with the growth of more multi-site churches, and there's even running a location can be a second chair role. And what are some of those principles that you've started to implement? What have you found that and that's been really beneficial for you working with your senior leader?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a tiny bit of a potted history. First of all, I've loved all the leaders that I've worked for. I still do honor them incredibly. So for the first 10 years at Riviera Life Church, I was working alongside senior leaders in Jackie Williams in Torquay, and they're 15 years, 20 years above me in terms of age, and so that creates a dynamic, and it takes a while just to build up relationship. It takes a while to build up trust, and you've got to navigate that. You've got to learn about other people. It doesn't that the relationships don't happen overnight. You've really got to work hard at relationships. Knowing your giftings. Okay, so Ian would operate one way, or preach one way, or communicate one way, and absolutely brilliant at what he does. And then I'll come. I'm very much a thinker. I'm very much a planner. I'm very much a teacher in terms of ministry gifting, as well as my profession as well, different things like that. And so it's just knowing where we can complement and what we can do, what skills I can bring to the table, so a lot of worship and developing the worship side of things, knowing that they wanted teachers and someone who could really start working on some discipleship to really complement everything that they're doing. That's one thing that I've been learning. I've been learning a lot about me as well. So maybe I've kind of realized over the years that no, I'm here to serve God, serve the people, serve the church, and unless God calls me out and for something else or another role, I'm here to serve. And so my personal dreams and ambitions, still hold on to them, but you're here to serve the vision of the senior leader and the church. And sometimes that's difficult. It's also learning that sometimes, very often, when we start out in ministry, we're looking for the next step. Very often we're looking for that senior leader position because that's where it feels maybe that we've got to progress. But actually, your church is growing. Your senior leaders, they need you, they want you, you're vital. Build up a relationship, grow that, because it's so exciting what's happening at Riviera Life Church at the moment. And actually there is a massive need for second chair leaders. And it's very difficult for me to say this. You almost want your first chair leaders to come on the podcast and talk about, the value of second chair leaders. But so I guess over the years, I've been through this kind of maybe maturing, maybe not. I'm still growing. But like, actually, I'm here for a reason, season to serve, to love. I've got my own expression, my own leadership giftings and callings, which are recognized, and feel quite at home. There's no pressure, good relationships, and all that kind of stuff. So that's just a few things that I've been working on and mulling over the years.
Yeah, great. Well, I think it is a vitally important skill to learn, and I think we sometimes think that the wrong thing to think would be that the senior leader has to have all the skill sets. They've got to be the great communicator and the planner, and they've got to be the relational person. They've got to have everything. Of course, that's completely untrue, because no one person can have all the skill sets. And so that second chair leader has to come in and be very complementary to the skills that the senior leader doesn't have, and that's actually a real strength. So you complement each other. I've learned a lot recently. It's a business podcast, but it's called the Second in Command podcast. Very similar. It speaks to the kind of COO roles in business, but very, very similar. Lots of sort of transferable skills and principles there, and recognizing that there is this complementary nature to the first chair leader and the second chair leader. And so I think for anyone that's in that role, any minister that's in a second chair, firstly, it's to say that like God has brought you into that role, and to not and not despise it because you want to be a senior leader, but actually there's a calling there, but to learn how to complement the senior leader well, I think is important.
It's really important. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a transition of leadership, and Jordan and Naomi Williams became the senior leaders, and they're 15 years younger than me. And all of a sudden, in terms of like, I'm the elder one in that relationship, and so the dynamic changes again. You've got to learn how to change the dynamic. We've got a good relationship where we're great friends, but even within that, it's okay knowing where the line is, knowing when your senior leader is the boss and has to do those kind of things, but knowing when there's friendship, relationship, openness, and all that kind of stuff. You've got to craft it. You've got to work at it. And I've been blessed, in the role that I am. And we're really developing, and we have done over the years, is develop a real good team ethic, and it's a joy. It's a joy, even in the difficult times, the hard times which happen, to be part of a team like this, have senior leaders, have second chair leaders, all working together in unity. It's really refreshing. And God, where there's unity, God commands the blessing, right? So,
yep.
So it's been, it's a really important role.